Good morning, Stillwater's friends. I have something so excited to tell you and something I can't believe I didn't tell you sooner. So I don't know if you follow me on Facebook, but once a month I do a wreath raffle, and it's typically a big bougie wreath that I only make one of, so it's a one-of-a-kind deal. And I'm actually getting ready to create that, and I've never done a step-by-step video tutorial with it, and I decided today's the day. So we're going to make a big old bougie watermelon summer wreath, and I want to take you along with me while I create that. But I also wanted to tell you, if you don't follow me on Facebook and if you were not aware that I do wreath raffles, this will actually be the third. Hop on over to my Facebook page if you want to get in on that action. I'll leave my Facebook page link below in this video description. Okay, let's start creating. I am so excited to create this watermelon summer wreath with you guys, friends. Let me show you what we're going to actually build this wreath on. This is a 24-inch pine wreath base. It actually came from Hobby Lobby. And just to show you on the back, friends, it's got 2 layers here with a boatload of pine ties that we're actually going to use as a strong, solid base for our wreath. And if you're new to pine wreath bases, friends, they are great and super sturdy for really big, bougie, or heavy wreaths. So I've cut the tag off of this, friends. Again, it's 24 inches in diameter. I know I typically show all of the supplies that we'll be using, but I've really pulled a boatload from my stock. So I've got a really cute Hello Summer sign from Hobby Lobby that we'll be using. I've grabbed a ton of coordinating ribbons, some Deco mesh, all kinds of things from my stash. And we're just going to create as we go. And so because of that, I don't want to show you a ton of supplies that may or may not be used. So just stick around with me and we'll see how we build this beauty out. Friends, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. If you enjoy all things wreath making, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit that bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new tutorial. Typically, you can expect to see new videos from me 2 to 3 times a week. All right, friends, I'm going to sit this sign aside, and I've got my hot glue gun plugged in and heating up. And while it's doing that, I'm going to fluff out this pine base, friends. You can actually grab these any time of year. I try to stock up on them around the Christmas holiday when they're a little bit more cost effective. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't, but that's a great time to grab them if you watch this tutorial and decide that you really like the pine base. It's my go-to for all things big and bougie. So all I'm doing, friends, is bringing some life into this base. You know, it's basically flat as a fritter. It's lived on the shelf and hung out since the holiday season. And so we need to bring this guy to life and lift up all these branches. Doesn't have to be perfect, friends. We're going to load this thing down with so many goodies. I'm just opening up those branches a bit so we've got a good base to add in our Deco mesh here in a short bit. How is everyone today? If you're new to my channel, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I always like to see what neck of the woods everybody's in. Just lifting up those branches and giving them a little separation from one another. That's really all I'm doing. All right, friends, that looks pretty good. No need for perfection here. I'm going to scooch that off to the side for just a minute while we prep our sign. So this is a pretty heavy sign from Hobby Lobby, as I mentioned earlier. It's about 15 inches in length and probably 10 or so inches in depth. I'm going to go ahead and leave this twine attachment on just because I really like those decorative balls. I want to go ahead and trim off our price tag here. Excuse me. And then on the back, I'm going to be placing this. Let me just show you briefly here. Down in the corner, off to the side here, on the bottom right-hand quadrant of our wreath. And so because of that, I need to add a couple of cable mounts so that we can attach those securely. We're going to load our pine wreath base with 3 different types of 10-inch deco mesh, the red and white, the green on green, and then the red, green, and white together. I feel like those will all work really nicely with our watermelon theme. And I know this is your first time watching me build out a pine wreath base. Generally speaking, I typically measure my deco mesh out so it's more precise. But when you're loading a lot of deco mesh into a wreath base, I kind of just pull and cut and don't actually measure. So what I'm going to do, friends, is just grab a hold of the end of my deco mesh. I think we'll start out cutting 7 pieces of each, and then if we need to add more, we can. And so I'm literally just going to pull it up so that my arm is at a 90-degree angle and cut. That'll ensure that my pieces are essentially the same size. So this actually ends up being about an 18-inch piece cut by just letting that deco mesh fall, holding my arm at a 90-degree angle, and then cutting. So I'm going to cut 7 pieces of each type of this 10-inch deco mesh at 18 to 20 inches in length, and then I'll meet you back here. I've got 21 pieces in total of the 18 to 20 inch cuts of our 10-inch deco mesh. I thought that would be a good starter point. If we need more, we can always cut some more. And if you've never loaded deco mesh into a pine wreath base, friends, it's actually super easy. And what we're going to do is make a cruffle. If you remember, a cruffle basically curls in on each end 1 or 2 times, and then you scrunch or gather in the center until you have what we call a cruffle. And that's really just a curl on each end with a ruffle in the middle, hence the cruffle. That just helps prevent the fray, friends. And so I'm just going to make my cruffles, grab a couple of neighboring pine ties, add it down to the base, give it a couple of tight twists, and move on to the next. Just alternating back and forth between the 3 colors to give us a nice full base. So again, you're just making a cruffle, finding a couple of neighboring pine ties, add your cruffle down to that base, and give it a couple of tight twists to hold that guy in place. And you can move it around to where you'd like. We're going to just keep alternating all the way around our pine base with our cruffles until this beauty is nice and full. I anticipate we'll probably need some more, but I didn't want to overcut, so we'll just keep on keeping on here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom through this part, friends, as I stuff our base full of cruffles, and then I'll let you know at the end how many we ended up actually using. So if you'd like to recreate this beauty, you'll have that information for you. I'll meet you back here in a bit. We've got our pine base fully loaded with our 10-inch deco mesh cruffles, friends. I ended up having to cut 6 more additional pieces, 2 of each color. So if you're following the same recipe, friends, for a 24-inch pine base, you'll need 27 pieces of 10-inch deco mesh cut at between 18 and 20 inches in length. I'm going to go ahead and grab our Hello Summer sign. Again, I got this from Hobby Lobby. And by now, our mounting brackets are nice and dry. And because this is a heavier sign, friends, I'm going to actually use some heavy gauge floral wire stems. If you're not new to my channel, you've probably seen me mention these a million times. But I basically get a package of, gosh, there's probably 100 or so in here of the heavy gauge floral wire stems from Hobby Lobby. They're pretty cost effective, might be $5 or $6 for this package, and it'll last me, you know, several months. So definitely a good investment if you're looking to add some more supplies to your wreath toolbox. I'm going to take my floral stem here and just fold that in half. Excuse me, the floral wire stem, and fold that in half so it's a loose V, and I've basically just identified our center point. And then I'm going to run that through the mounting bracket. Just give it one loose twist or two to hold that guy in place so it doesn't slide around. So again, I'm just running that through there. And then at that center point of the V, just giving it a twist or two here to keep it from getting squirrely on us. And then remember, we're going to leave this hanger on for now and not do much with it. It's going to go in the bottom right hand corner, and you're just going to open your floral wire stems here, friends, into a V and poke that straight through your wreath. You can only do one end at a time. Give yourself some patience here, friends. And then you're going to hold your sign in place with your hands. Once those wires are running through, flip it over. Find where those wires are at, friends. And the important part is you want each wire to be on the outside of your two metal rings here on your pine wreath base. So I've got the inner one on the inside and the outer one on the outside, because if you don't ensure that, friends, then it's not going to stay put. It'll slide around. Once you have that in place, just give those wires a couple of twists. We're going to flip it over one more time to make sure it's still where we want it, and it is. So holding that in place with our hands, we'll turn it over one more time. And now I'm just going to keep twisting that guy. And then I'm going to grab my needle nose pliers because those ends are sharp a bit. And I'm going to twist that so it's twisted in total a good 10 or so times so it's nice and secure. You don't want to make it so tight that those mounting brackets pop off, but you want a tension rate of about 80% or so. Then you can trim off those excess bits of your floral wire stem, and then curl that spot under so it's not going to scratch you or your customer's door. Then I'm going to just take my glue gun, and on each of those metal pine wreath base rings, I'm going to run a little bead of glue right over where our floral wire meets that frame, just to give it a little bit of extra added strength and security. Once those glue drops have dried, friends, go ahead and flip your wreath back over. Hang on to your sign if it's heavy, such as mine. And then we're going to repeat those exact same steps. Just adding a few glue drops to really give it that strength and stability. And we'll give it a minute or so to dry. Our sign is firmly attached. It is so stinking cute, friends. This is going to be such an adorable wreath. And I'm still undecided what I want to do with this string because I just really love those clay beads. And so I'm just going to let it hang out there for a little bit while we move on to the next step. So let's go ahead and make our bow, friends. I'm actually going to add one semi-bougie bow up here to the upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to set my wreath, which by the way is already heavy and looking so cute. Let me show you the ribbon that I've chosen, friends. You just pull this stack in here. If you are new to wreath making or bow making and still struggle with that, I know it was one of the hardest things for me to learn when I first started making and door hangers. I'm gonna walk through and create this bow pretty quickly, friends, just for the purposes of saving some time on our video here. However, I will leave a couple of step-by-step bow making tutorials for you in the description of this video. So if you'd like a little extra support and guidance on bow making, once you're finished, go ahead and click on those couple of links to get that step-by-step tutorial. So what I'm going to use here, friends, in terms of tools, I've just got a good pair of scissors, and I'm going to secure my bow. Most times I secure my bows with a 6-inch zip tie. I just find that easiest and most sturdy for me, but you can also use a Chanel stem or a pipe cleaner, and of course some floral wire. But for today, we're going to use the 6-inch zip tie. When you're making a bow, friends, I always recommend that whatever type of ribbon you choose, and you can truly choose as many or as few ribbon types as you'd like, just make sure that whatever ribbon you're using is wired. It's my personal preference to mix and match the 2.5-inch width ribbons with a 1.5-inch ribbon. I just feel like that gives the bow lots of depth and dimension, but that's certainly just a preference. You can use what you like. I just encourage you to grab some wired ribbon. And as soon as I say that to you, friends, I'm going to show you a different kind of ribbon that we're going to add in. I don't even know that I would really call it ribbon. This, ironically, came from the Dollar Tree, and it's obviously not wired. It's just a really delicate string art ribbon. And I felt like this would be really cute for some tails within our wreath. So we're going to consider using that as well. And again, everything I'm telling you at this point, friends, it's just my own personal style and method. There's 1,000,001 different ways to make bows for your wreaths or for any purpose. So this is just a recipe. Feel free to follow it exactly or tweak it or use something else. It's totally up to you. And I'll leave those extra tutorials for you in the description below. I chose this black and white polka dot ribbon, friends, because when you're making a bow, a pop of an alternate color really makes the rest of your bow stand out. So you can see if I take away that black and white polka dot and show you these 3 ribbon types, they do look super cute together, but there's really no wow factor. And I like wow factor, especially when working with my Wreath Raffle wreaths, because they're extra big and bougie. And so I thought this black and white polka dot really helped create that wow factor, and it ties in nicely with the watermelon seeds, both on this ribbon and on our sign. I'm going to start out with the 2.5-inch ribbons on the bottom. We're going to start with this black and white polka dot, and I'm not going to measure this, friends. We're just going to kind of eyeball it. I would suggest that you make your tails a little bit longer than you would anticipate needing, just probably a 6-inch loop in case you're curious. But again, I'm not measuring, friends. So I'm just pulling that together in my hand. My left hand will remain stationary. It's my holding hand. And my right hand is the working hand. And I'm just making some loops. And again, I'm going to guess that they're 6 inches. I'm not 100%. And to check and to see if your loops are the same size, friends, just put your fingers in each loop, run them up on top of one another, and if they meet at the same spot, they're the same size. If they don't, then adjust accordingly. I had one loop that was a tad smaller than the other. Now we're good. I'm going to use just 2 loops and 2 tails of each of these ribbon types. And I'm still undecided what we're going to do with this. I just really like it, so we may or may not use it. So we've got ribbon number 1. I always like to pull a good bit of ribbon out so that I'm not constantly unrolling it. And generally, as I go, the loops will get about 1 inch or so shorter, sometimes 2, on each end. So I'm gathering that in my working hand, twisting it underneath my thumb so that that pretty side is out. Get my tail out of the way here. Making my loop that's just going to be probably a 1/2 inch or so smaller than the previous loop. Twisting it underneath my thumb, which is remaining stationary. And making my second loop. Run my tail down, cut it 1 inch or 2 short, shorter than my previous tail. I'll set that off to the side. I'm going to use my red 1.5 inch next. Holding that underneath my thumb, giving it a twist so that pretty side is out when I make my loop. We're probably down to a 4-inch loop at this point, friends, because I'm making the loops a little smaller as I go and the tails a little smaller as I go. Just going to make sure they're basically the same size by pulling them up onto one another. And then I'll cut off my tail. Now we're onto this fun and funky green and white stripe. Holding that underneath my stationary thumb, giving it a twist. Pretty side out. Giving it another twist. Keeping that pretty side out. All right, and cutting that guy off. Didn't really pay much attention to the measurements, friends. Like I mentioned earlier, I just made my loops a little smaller as I went and my tails a little shorter as I went. I'm keeping that in my stationary hand. When you add your zip tie, you want this attaching end to be on the back. So I'm just going to place that on my fingers, hang tight to my ribbon stack here. Takes a little bit of finesse, just don't let go as long as one of your hands is hanging on tight there. Cinch that guy up in the middle, and then before you give it that final cinch, make sure it's all the way to the back side of your bow. Nobody wants to see that. And then cut off that remaining bit of your zip tie. I leave, gosh, probably a 1/16 of an inch, a little bit of a nub, just to make sure it doesn't slide out of there. I like to add, friends, when I'm making a bow, you know, when you look at bows online or someone else's completed work, they always look perfect and fluffy and, you know, like they came out of a magazine, but that's not the reality for most bows. You're seeing the end product. So when you first look at a bow, it basically just looks like this. It's flat, not super cute, and that's okay. That's what they look like when you first make them. So give yourself some grace with that. All right, so remember I want the Hello Summer in this bottom right-hand quadrant. And so I'm going to add my bow at a chenille stem in the upper left-hand quadrant. So I'm just going to find a couple of close together pine ties. I keep saying chenille stems, forgive me, friends, but pine ties. And then we'll secure that guy down. Not too tightly, because you don't want your bow to get lost down in there. And we're going to do what I call a rough fluff. I know that a lot of people fluff out their bows nearly to perfection when they first add them in, but I prefer to just get all of my loops and tails going in the right direction, hence why I call it the rough fluff. But then I don't actually finish up what I'm doing with the fluffing until near the end of my wreath, because I just want to know where they're going to lay and land, and then I'll do the rest in a short bit. All right. Of course, some of those tails are going to need trimmed, but we're just not going to worry about that just yet. So we've added our bow here in the upper left corner, and I want to add some ribbon tails behind this to be flowing up. So I'm going to scooch that off to the side and come right back to my ribbons. And I don't like my ribbon to stand too much farther past the outermost perimeter of my wreath. This is probably, I don't know, 14 or 15 inches, actually 18 inches. So I'm going to cut that off at 18 inches and sit that off to the side. And we're going to add one tail each. Well, that's perfect, friends, of each of these ribbons. Just reducing the length by a couple of inches so that it's an inch shy on each end here to add our tails in. And again, not measuring, just eyeballing, not looking for perfection here. If you're more comfortable measuring, of course, please do so. All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and add just the smallest piece, probably 10 inches or so, maybe 12 of this delicate Dollar Tree ribbon, just because it's adorable. And I'm going to lay that right in the middle. And then to find the center of your ribbon stack, friends, just fold it in half. Put your thumb at that halfway point. That'll tell you basically where your halfway marker is. Then I'm just going to pinch and gather right in that center so it looks like a big sloppy men's bow tie. I'm going to fold that into a V. And then I'm going to come in behind my bow. I'm going to find a couple of ties, pine ties, and just add this right on in there. Just tying right around with those pine ties. Make sure you get it nice and secure, especially if your ribbon is satiny. If it feels slippery, you can always add a drop of glue. And so you can see once we get to this point, friends, how that's really going to add some extra depth and dimension to the back side of our wreath, because we've just put in some tails here. And we'll fluff those out and trim them up towards the end of our wreath creation when we do the rest of our tails. That's going to be adorable. I'm considering adding another set of tails like that below our watermelon. We may or may not. We'll wait and see. But the next step is to add some embellishments. So hopefully your glue gun is still hot and ready to go. I'm going to grab some florals and greeneries and I'll be right back. All right, friends, let me show you what I grabbed. I'm not sure yet what we're going to use, but I just wanted some options. I grabbed a couple of ficus branches. Those are really good to add some length and dimension, so they give lots of character. A darker green, which matches well the outer piece of our watermelon slice, and yet they're also flat, so they don't really get in the way. So I've grabbed some of those. I grabbed a couple of other bushes of variegated greenery. These came from Ellis's Home and Garden. I like them because they've got lots of different types of greenery, different colors of greenery, and they're twiggy as well, so it's got a nice summer vibe. I grabbed a small bush of red flowers that we may or may not use, and some white that are exactly the same. We'll save those here for just a short bit. Let's go ahead and add our first Fica branch to the lower left-hand portion of our wreath. And so what I always recommend, friends, when you get your florals, especially if you order them online, but even if you grab them from the store, typically those florals and greeneries are the victim of shipping, and so they're flat, a little bit lifeless, and they need you to wake them up. And so all I do is make sure that my hands touch every single branch. I'm just pulling them apart, lifting the branches. If they were flowers, I would be opening up those flowers just to make sure that nothing was squished, misshapen, or had fallen victim to shipping. Basically, you just want to make sure that your hands are touching every bit of your bush, whether it's floral or greenery. And remember, friends, nearly always, I'm not going to say always, but probably 95% of the time, your florals come on a wire-based vane. And so you can really twist them and bend them how you want. I'm going to dry place this. I think I want it down below here. Hopefully you can capture all this on the camera, friends. I know it's a little bit tricky because this is a big fella. So I'm hoping you can see this, friends. I'm going to run this on the side and then just kind of curve my branches so it's got a nice flow. So I'm actually going to trim off. I've got about, gosh, probably a 5-inch stem here, and I don't need it that long to secure this guy in. So I'm going to cut off a couple of inches of this stem. So trim it down to the size that you need. You need enough stem, friends, that your greenery or floral is sturdily intact and attached, but you don't want such a long stem that you have to worry about it shooting out the back. So just a little tip for you there. So when you go to attach your florals or greenery stems, friends, I just run a good couple of inches, depending on the length of the stem, of hot glue once I know where I want to place it, and then add that guy right in. So we're going to get this piece added in. Hopefully you can see this on camera, but if not, you'll be able to see this once we have the end result and it's hanging. All right, friends, as you can see, or hopefully you can see within the camera here, we've got our first Fica branch fully intact down here and just added directly into the base of our wreath. And I've taken our second Fica branch and actually cut it down into 3 smaller stems, friends, because I want to build up some body down there where we've added the first branch and some layering. So I'm just going to dry place these guys where I'd like to see them in our wreath, and then we're going to hot glue them in. I'm adding these branches about 1 inch above the original branch, friends, to really give it extra depth and dimension and some height, and having a nice flow at an angle. All right, this is looking so adorable. Let's go ahead and add some ribbon tails on top of this greenery, friends, just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension, and I may even put curls. Let's just see. So I'm going to add probably a 24-inch. I'm not measuring it, guys. We're just going to eyeball. 18 to 24-inch, probably 18-inch. Single tail of the black and white polka dot, the red and white polka dot, and our lime green and white stripes. Let's just see how this looks, guys. It's the joy of creating. You get to just do things whimsically and see how you like it. I'm going to add one on top of the other. I did not measure them out ahead of time. They're just cut as is, and ironically are nearly the same length. So I'm going to fold that in half just like we did with our upper tails. I'll fold those guys in half to find that center point. I'm going to pinch and gather here. I'm going to add it to a couple of ties down here on the lower level near the Fica. And again, if you're using satiny or slippery ribbon when you're making tails, make sure you really get those guys buttoned down. That looks really nice. And because it's wired ribbon, it'll go any direction you'd like. So I'd like it to flow basically the same way our upper tails are going. So I'm gonna come back around here and we're going to trim these tails a little bit. You can either dovetail or angle cut those, whatever style you prefer. I just, you know, always recommend you cut a little bit. You can always go back in and trim them if you didn't get quite enough taken off, but you sure can't put it back on. So cut delicately. It's my preference to always cut the tails at different lengths, friends, just because I like to see the different ribbons peek out. I feel like it gives it some whimsy, but you can sure trim them how you'd please. And then I'm just going to take my fingers, because they're wired ribbon, and kind of pull them up and over like a little cascading bump here. Not sure if that's in video or not. This beauty is so big. I'm not going to dovetail or trim the green stringy ribbon from the Dollar Tree, because I feel like it'll not do it any justice. So I definitely don't want to do that. I'm going to come back over to the tails of our bow and give them a trim as well. Again, angle cutting those tails. I really like that black and white. I feel like it gives it a nice pop and really brings those seeds in as well. So that worked out pretty good. So tell me, friends, do you like big bougie wreaths on your door? Do you prefer something more simple? What's your wreath preference? I really like them all. I don't know that I even have a preference. I've got a pretty big house, and our door sits a decent way away from the road and sidewalk. So I guess I do like them a tad bigger, just because I feel like they get better visibility. I'm going to trim the tails down here as well. Still angle cutting. And then I'll use my fingers and run them over the ribbons to give them a little bump of height here. So cute. Oh my goodness. Let's add one more set of tails to the bottom right quadrant here, friends. Maybe a little bit shorter than our previous set. Again, you know, I'm just kind of eyeballing here. Angle cut your ends or dovetail, whatever you've decided to do. This is actually going to, as I mentioned earlier, friends, be part of my May wreath raffle. So I'm actually going to launch it this evening on my Facebook page. I'll link my Facebook page down below if you are interested in this beauty. Wreath raffles are a great way for folks to get a really nice bougie wreath at a fraction of the cost. So they've been a big hit. It's been fun to do. And I'll let that wreath raffle run over the weekend, possibly into early next week. It depends on how quickly it takes for those slots to fill up. And then we'll do the drawing to see who wins this beauty. So if you're interested, I'll link my Facebook page below so you can hop on over and get in on the fun. I'm going to cut a handful of 10-inch pieces, maybe 12-inch pieces. Let's see. Of 10-inch pieces of this super cute stringy ribbon from the Dollar Tree, just to make a few tails to add in whimsically here and there on the top part of our wreath. And we're not too far from being done, friends. Again, I'm not going to angle or dovetail the ends of this because I feel like it's just too delicate for that. And it's nice and airy, so we'll be able to see it just fine peeking through. Let's see. So I'm just going to fold that in half, friends, pinch it in the center, and add it to various pine ties just sprinkled around the wreath here. I'm going to take this string, friends. I really want to leave those beads attached. I'm just going to find a pine tie towards the top and swirl that around that pine tie. It'll give it some extra stability and be a good hanger. And it's also going to let us see those beads. I hope you've enjoyed creating this bougie Hello Summer Watermelon Wreath, friends. If you love all things to do with wreath making, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and click that bell for notifications. And of course, if you enjoyed, give this video tutorial a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. Thanks for spending time with me today, friends. Happy crafting.